Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. Are you new to this channel? If so, please don't forget to subscribe it. Please like, comment and share this video when you watch it. Today we are discussing on Know Your Literary Terms 3. In my earlier videos, I discussed about different literary terms under the heading Know Your Literary Terms 1 and 2. Here is Know Your Literary Terms 3. We are talking about different literary terms including analogy, conceit, image, imagery. First of all, let's talk about analogy. Analogy is a comparison in which a known idea or a thing is compared to another unknown idea or a thing that is quite different from it. That's the point. Writer uses analogies to link an unfamiliar or to a new idea with common and unfamiliar objects. This makes it easier for readers to comprehend a new idea, which may have been difficult for them to understand otherwise. So, we can find the comparison of two things, unfamiliar and familiar, in analogy. Similes, metaphors, allegories, parables, exemplifications are different types of analogies. In similes, the writers compare two similar things using like or as to show their resemblance. But in metaphors, the writers don't use comparing words. They directly express what they mean to say without using any comparisons. Allegories, parables and exemplums or exemplification, these are all didactic literatures. And allegory is a story or visual image with second distinct or latent meaning. It is signified rather than signifier. So what the writer means to say by using the signifier. Signifier is what we call denotation, surface understanding, surface meaning, but the purpose of allegory is to get the readers or learners know about implied meaning or latent meaning, what we call signified in the contemporary literary discussions. Parable is a brief tale. Again, it's like an allegory, which is understood as an allegory. That is again the emphasis on signified, emphasis on latent meaning, not on surface meaning. So it means that is again, according to modern literary theory, modern literary interpretation, it's focus on signified. Exemplification or exemplum is a short tale used as an example to illustrate a moral point. Again, this is didactic part of literature. So, what we know, these allegories, parables, exemplar, similes, metaphors, all are used as analogies. These all literary devices are tools, or literary devices are the methods of expressing like and similar things. They are the devices used to compare familiar and unfamiliar objects. An analogy extends the comparison in order to explain a topic in a way the audience will understand. For example, John Donne in his poem The Flea uses analogy of a flea to describe his love with his beloved. This flea is you and I, and this our marriage bed and marriage temple is. In the quoted lines from The Flea, John Donne tells his darling beloved that as a flea has sucked blood from both of them, and their blood has mingled in its gut, So the flea has become their wedding bed. I think you got the point regarding analogy. Let's talk about conceit. Conceit means concept. Conceit refers to an extended, often elaborate metaphor. We talked about a metaphor earlier. It's the comparison of two objects without the use of like or as, without the use of comparing words like or as. Uh, just it's telling something directly. It presents a parallel between two seemingly dissimilar things or ideas brought violently together. Similes and metaphors may explain things vibrantly, but they tend to become boring at times because of their predictable nature. Similes and metaphors are simple, and the readers can easily assume what the writer is trying to tell. And when the readers know it easier, and there is no point of entertainment, there is no point of thinking seriously. Or similes and metaphors may explain things vibrantly, but they tend to become boring because of their predictable nature. Conceits, on the other hand, surprise and shock the readers by making far-fetched comparisons, which readers cannot easily assume, and it takes time for the reader to grapple with the images, to think about the signifier and what they are trying to signify. That's the point uh, we have to know in conceit. For example, the flea by metaphysical poet John Donne is a perfect example of conceit. We talked about flea uh, while discussing about analogy here earlier, and the same poem, The Flea by John Donne, is very perfect example of conceit. It's very perfect. Oh, stay, there lives in one flea sphere where we almost more than married are. This plea is you and I, and this our marriage bed and marriage temple is. Though parents, grows and you, we are not, we are met, and cloistered in these living walls of it. The entire poem itself uses play, but as a way to talk a lover into a sexual relation. John Donne uses creative and complex analogies to compare their sexual union to the bite of the flea. Since their blood already mixed in the flea, they are already connected in a sexual union. Even though their physical attachment is far, but they have become the bed because of the flea. Conceits often were so far-fetched as to become absurd, degenerating in the hands of novice poets into strand ornamentation as mocked by Shakespearean sonnet number 133 as in the opening lines. Very popular lines. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. The conceit was a popular literary device throughout the Elizabethan age, the Baroque age, and the principal technique of the 17th century English metaphysical poets. The conceit figures prominently in the works of John Donne, Emily Dickinson, and T.S. Eliot. After discussing about analogy and conceit, it's time to talk about image. Image is a word or phrase in a literary text that appeals directly to the reader's senses, such as taste, touch, hearing, sight, or smell. An image is thus any vivid or picturesque phrase that evokes a particular sensation in the reader's mind. Many images, but by no means all, are conveyed by figurative language, as in metaphor, simile, synecdoche, onomatopoeia, and metonymy. An image may be visual, pertaining to sight, olfactory, pertaining to smell, tactile, pertaining to touch, auditory, pertaining to hearing, gustatory, pertaining to taste, abstract, in which case it will appeal to what may be described as the intellect, and kinesthetic, pertaining to the sense of movement and bodily effort. So, these are the images. Images relate to sense organs. These lines from Peter Redgrove's Lazarus and the Sea contain all these kinds of images mentioned in the section image here. Let's talk about imagery. The combination or clusters, or we can say array of images that are used to create a dominant impression in the mind of the reader. They are imagery. Imagery conveys word pictures in the minds of the readers. Imagery as a general term covers the use of language to represent objects, actions, feelings, thoughts, ideas, states of mind, and any sensory or extrasensory experience. We already talked about abstract image and kinesthetic image. So these all also come under extrasensory experience of a person. An image does not necessarily mean a mental picture. Death, corruption, and disease imagery, for example, creates a powerful network in Shakespeare's tragedy of Hamlet. T.S. Eliot uses visual and auditory imagery in the preludes. Theodore Roth's My Papa's Waltz uses olfactory and tactile imagery. William Carlos Williams, This Is Just to Say, uses gustatory imagery. So these different poems, different creative works by different writers uses different imagery. It's the power of the writer to create such mental picture or sensory picture or extrasensory picture. It's the power that they use to convey what they mean, what they are trying to convey in their signifiers, and they use through the use of imagery they go to the discussion. Let's see the types of imagery. We already talked about different types of imagery regarding our discussion on image. So here are different types of imagery listed. Number 1, visual. Visual imagery relates to sight or seeing things. Oral imagery relates to sound and hearing mechanism. Acoustic. Olfactory imagery relates to smell, that's scent. Tactile imagery relates to skin, that is outer touch or texture. Gustatory imagery relates to tongue, tastes of flavor. Kinesthetic imagery relates to sense movement and bodily force. And organic or subjective imagery relates to appealing to intellect, emotions, or sensations of a person, such as fear, hunger, etc. So, abstract, kinesthetic, or organic, or subjective, whatever, these are extrasensory imagery. In our discussion, we discussed about analogy, conceit, image, and imagery. So I think you got the points.